This film is to honor a great man who's a part of the heritage of Southern Arkansas University. Southern Arkansas was known as 3rd District Agricultural School from 1909 to 1925. From 1925 until 1950, it was Magnolia A&M. From 1950 until 1976, it was Southern State College. And from 1976 till the present, it's been known as Southern Arkansas University. One of the greatest things about this university is the people that have been here and affected the lives of the ones that came after them. There's only, in everyone's life, there's usually only 1 or 2, maybe 3 people that really impact a life. And Coach Elmer Smith was definitely one of those people. He came to Southern Arkansas University in 1946 to revive a football program from scratch. He built, in 8 years that he was here, he built a powerhouse in football, basketball, as well as developing the character of some people that have gone on to become doctors, leaders in their community, mayors of their town. He left an impact. Coach Elmer believed in hard work. He believed in discipline. He believed in sacrifice. He believed in courage. And he believed in loyalty. He was an example of common sense. He was an example of unselfishness. He was an innovator. And he was a competitor. And did he ever believe in winning?
I was one of the ones responsible for the only score that we made. General Red Jones threw me a pass for 39 yards, and I ran to the 1-yard line, and they tackled me, and it took us 4 downs to score. And in 1947, Coach Elmer moved me from the squad and appointed me as the trainer. Well, I remember one game, the Burton boys. Lynn was left guard and Ben was right tackle. And on a certain play, Ben went down, and I ran out on the field to see what was wrong. And Coach Elmer always said, if there's an injury somewhere, drag him off. Well, I couldn't drag Lynn off, or Ben, so I pulled his shoulder back in place. He stayed in the game, and I went over the sideline. On the next play, the same thing happened, but it was to Lynn. His left shoulder was out of place. So I went out on the field again with Coach Elmer shouting, drag him off. And I pulled Lynn's left shoulder back in place. Coach Elmer told me one day, said, I want you to come to the house, that I've got a project that I need some help with. And the project was, he took me out the back to a little shed and said, we're going to make some lead cleats. He said, I've got an idea that if you practice with lead cleats, the heaviness of those cleats on your shoes, when game time comes, we're going to swap the lead cleats for the plastic cleats, and you can run like a feather. Well, anyway, that fell through. The lead cleats were all right, but it never did really materialize. Coach Elmer, I remember going on a trip to Ozark, and we had a good ball club. This is 1947. We got up there, we spent the night, and Coach Elmer called a meeting the next morning. He said, fellas, he said, I went out on the campus last night and walked around and said, I felt real strange. Said every time I went by a dormitory, I thought somebody's going to jump out and just knock the hell out of me. Well, the fellas didn't know what to expect. They didn't really know what was going on. The next day, Ozark upset us. They beat us, I believe it was 7-6. And I don't believe we even took time to dress. I think we got on the bus with the uniforms and headed back to Magnolia. I could go on with a number of stories, but I'm going to pass it on to some other.
In my sophomore year, I had a big boil develop right on my kneecap. It was extremely painful. I could hardly get into my stance, but missing practice was unheard of. You just did not miss practice. And Ralph Ross was helping me. He would cut a donut out of foam rubber and put over that, and I was able to bear it. And I went in this day to have that done, and before Ralph could get there, Coach Elmer walked through and he saw me sitting on the training table. He said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "Well, I've got this boil here on my knee." He said, "Well, let me see if I can help you with that." He took a pair of tape scissors and actually cut that boil right off my knee. He took a Q-tip and dipped it in methylate and put it in there and put a Band-Aid on it and said, "That ought to hold you." And I haven't had a boil since then. So I know Coach Elmer was practicing without a license, but I didn't dare tell him that.
My name is Charlie McClendon. I'm from Louisville, Arkansas. I probably put up the greatest challenge to Coach Elmer Smith ever had. I never had the opportunity to play football like my friends here did, but I came over on a basketball scholarship, but I wanted to play football. So he allowed me to come out for the football team. And should I say, the things that he taught me is unbelievable. To me, he may have been just 5 feet tall, but he looked like he was 10 feet tall in my eyes, just because he demanded discipline. He demanded you to perform on the football field, and two, not to cause more injuries, but he wanted you to be tough. And this is something I think that's what football is all about. You got to know how to be tough. You got to play hurt. And then later on in the years, things get much easier. But it just formed my life for me. I don't know where I would have been had I not had not only the education here at Magnolia, but also the training that Coach Elmer gave me. He almost had to show me how to put the pads on because I never had that experience before. But he was I never saw the humor that Ralph has referred to that Coach Elmer had, because he was always so serious with all of the rest of us. Ralph is the only one, I think, could have got that humor out of Coach Elmer. But I tell you, to the day that he was with us, I think I talked to him with about a month, a week I should say, just before he passed away. And what a sweet man that he was. He was a forgiving person, and I can only say that my life, what my profession was in coaching, I owe it all to Coach Elmer Smith, because he gave me the training that was necessary.
My name's Bob Talley. I was referred to as Bobby all the time, and my wife always says she knows who I'm talking to just by the first name. And I was here with Coach Elmer 47 and 1948, 2 real banner years. And I think when I first met Coach Elmer, he was a man, but in 2 years he became a prince. And later on in life, I think he even became a king. He introduced me to running track, because where I went to high school, we didn't have track, and I played a little football for him, a lot of basketball, and a lot of track. But we were down at the old Columbia Stadium, and we had spikes. The track that we were going to use was nothing but a football field. It was dirt. And I had to ask, I said, well, what is a 440? And he said, well, it's just once around the track. I said, well, how fast do you run? He said, fast as you can run the whole way. So I did that. And let me tell you, if you've never done that, that's the closest thing to childbirth that you'll ever have. It's trying to run 440 yards at full speed ahead. But the story I want to tell about Coach Elmer Smith goes a little past my playing days into my professional life. And my entire professional life, I was in contact with Coach Elmer Smith. But the incident I want to relay is when I was working in San Francisco, and Coach Elmer Smith, by then, I believe, was president of the American Coaching Association. He was in Miami, Florida. And one day my secretary came to me and she said, there's a man on the phone that's so demanding, I think he may be crazy, because he demands some things and he wants them right now. I said, okay, fine. So he introduced himself right away as Coach Elmer Smith. He said, Bobby, I got a problem down here in Miami. I got 100 coaches that need to go to Chicago, and I know you have all those American Airlines planes that you beck and call, so I need one of them right now. Do you think I'm going to tell Coach Elmer Smith he can't have a 707? Not on your life. So I called our headquarters and I said, I need an airplane and I need it now. And as luck would have it, thank you, dear Lord, we had an airplane in Miami. It went to Chicago. Coach Elmer Smith chartered it for his 100 coaches to go to a meeting. And unlike some stories you might hear today, I have a letter from him addressed to Bobby Talley, American Airlines, San Francisco. I don't think you'd get it today, but with Coach Elmer, they were afraid not to deliver it. So I salute Coach Elmer Smith for making me what I am today. Thank you.
I wasn't aware of Coach Elmer Smith's influence until after January of 1948. I had the first date with a boy by the name of Ben Burton to the football banquet in January the 15th, 1948. We became an item after that, and we walked around the campus holding hands most of the time. But if Ben by any chance saw Coach Elmer at a distance, he'd toss my hand down, walk ahead of me. I realized then that he thought that Coach Elmer thought he wasn't supposed to think about anything except football. Well, that went away after the fall season of 1948, and Ben got on the AIC football recognition. One day I was walking into the post office, and Coach Elmer Smith was coming out with a box, and he had opened the box, and he took the item out. He stopped me and said, "Here, Laverne, I know you're going to get this anyway," and it was Ben's AIC football award.
Quick story that I want to tell. I'm Doyle Wallace. I'm from Ball Knob, Arkansas. I came here in 1948. We were a junior college, Magnolia A&M. A couple of quick stories. One of my stories is somewhat like Lynn Burton's. I had a deep bruise in my right thigh, and back then the way you treated those bruises, it was a knot in my thigh almost the size of a hen egg. And the treatment for that time was to roll that out with a tape can. And speaking about childbirth, who said that? He would roll that tape can over that knot, and it would thump, and it was the most terrible thing I've ever known. And while he was doing that, if you guys remember, he always had a nice clean hat on, that Stetson hat, and I wouldn't have done this for $1,000, but my left foot automatically came up, and I kicked Coach Elmer in the chest. Certainly accidental. And that hat fell off in that dirty floor in the bottom of McCrary Hall, McCrary Hall, and got that hat all dirty, and I thought it was a dead man. He didn't say anything at all about it. He just picked the hat up and dusted it off and put it back on his head and went back to doing the worst thing he could possibly do, and that was finish rolling out that knot in my thigh. But a day or two after that, now it made the thigh feel better, and you could walk a little bit better for a few hours, and of course it was a lot worse right after that. So he had just had someone, Ross, you may know, he had someone to make a whirlpool. It was a homemade whirlpool. It looked like it was homemade. No one had ever been in that whirlpool, so he was going to put me in that whirlpool. So I got in the whirlpool. It was water all the way up to my chest, and he picked up the plug, was going to plug it into the wall. He started to plug it in, and then he pulled the plug back, and he got a handful of dry jerseys and piled them up there in front of that plug, and then took the plug and stuck it into the outlet. He was up on the dry shirts. I'm in the water all the way up to my chest. I never knew whether he did that to scare me, doing it for fun, or what, but that was an actual story. Now, since that was so fast, I want to tell a funny story about Bill Cook from Truman. Some of you guys remember him. He went into the ball. He'd been in the ball game about,
5 or 10 minutes. He wasn't a starter, but it was a hot afternoon. And he was, perspiration just rolling down his face. Uniform was wet. And Harvey Cook wasn't in the game at the time. Well, Bill Cook was out there about, no more than 20 yards on the field, playing hot. Coach Elmer leaned over and said, "Warm up, Cook," hollering at Harvey Cook. He was wanting him to warm up and go in at fullback. And Bill Cook started doing the side straddle hop out on the field. That's a true story. Coach Elmer was like a second father to me. He was all the things that these other folks have said and more. If they could have thought of more superlatives, they would have said them. He was our man. I played 48, 49, 50, came back after the Korean War and played in 1954, football and baseball.
I'm Ben Burton, originally from Magnolia. I was here in the football season of 47 and 48. I want to say, first of all, how indebted we are to Homer Stout for originating this and how much it will mean to people who follow to have these memories of Coach Elmer Smith. While I was coaching, and Coach Elmer Smith was one of the reasons I coached, it didn't take me a couple of years to find out I wasn't Elmer Smith, but I read a book by the great West Point coach, Red Blake. It was called The Winning Edge. And I remember a statement in there that I think Homer bears out, and certainly Coach Elmer Smith bears out, that nice guys are a dime a dozen, but an aggressive leader is priceless. And when you think about that, it's so true across the board in all walks of life that certain leaders who just step up and do the job mean so much to the rest of us. And certainly Coach Elmer Smith was one of those. And I don't question or minimize anyone else's story. Lynn told one about cutting the boil off. I want to say this, not to counter that at all, but to say that for future people who may see these tapes, Coach Elmer Smith may sound, in the name, the word rough's been tough, has been used a lot here today. He was tough. Yes, he was tough, but he was not ruthless. He had people's well-being at mind all the while. He was the courageous leader. Courage has been used here 2 or 3 times. And innovative. He was courageous enough to be innovative, but I think of Coach Elmer in another slice of courage. He was courageous enough to expect from us a lot more than any of us expected of ourselves. And that takes real courage. And we are better made than we think we are. We are tougher than we think we are, all of us. And Coach Elmer Smith exemplified that. I heard a story from his wife, Sybil Smith, who was a slight lady who taught in the public schools. And she was describing, which she didn't have to any of us, how devoted and one way Coach Elmer Smith was during a football season. Nothing interfered with football and his total devotion to it, and I just wouldn't even estimate the hours he spent at it. But they had a rooster that would run to Miss Smith and spur her when she'd get out of the car and start in the house, and she reported this to Coach Smith 2 or 3 times during a football season. He hardly took notice of it, as you can imagine how important that was to him. But one day, the rooster ran at Coach Smith to spur him, and she described his walk from the garage to the house. The rooster ran at him. He didn't miss a stride. He reached, picked up the rooster, jerked his head off, and came right on in the house without a word.
I'm Delvin Ross, and I played football and basketball for Coach Elmer in 47, 48, and graduated in 49. The thing that I remember most about Coach Elmer was that when he said something, you better do it. I can remember that when I was playing basketball, I had a collision with another player. Had a slit over my eye. It's during practice, and he said, Auburn, that's Coach Auburn, he said, take him over there and bandage him up. So we were there. I thought I was through for the evening, but about 5 minutes after Coach Auburn got me patched up, I was back in there, and I didn't question anything that Coach Elmer ever said. There's one man here that finished his career with a 1,000 percentage in passing. I was quarterback in the football team, and I'd set up what we call the reverse pass. And we had a passer at tailback at that particular time. And so I had it set up, and I got in the huddle, and I looked up, and here comes Sammy Furo in for Rex Woodruff. Well, Sammy is not a passer. No way. But I said, well, we're going to run it anyway. And Sammy threw the pass and completed it for a touchdown. The next week, Coach Elmer told me, he said, let Sammy finish his career with 1,000%. Said, don't let him throw another pass. Consequently, he did not throw another pass. Another thing I remember, when I was a freshman, I was playing basketball, and we went down to Magnolia playing a tournament. And I was the 6th or 7th man on the squad at that particular time. And he had sent me in. I made 2 passes in about 30 seconds. And then I was sitting on the bench. Well, he didn't say a thing to me while I was getting dressed. We get back to the hotel room. He gets off the bus first. All the players get off. And he's walking towards the hotel. And all the players pass by him. And I'm still behind him because I know he's going to say something to me. So finally I got up enough courage to walk by him. And I thought I had it made. But I was about 10 yards in front of him, and I heard him say, Ross, you ought to be a world beater tomorrow night because you're stinking tonight.
My name is Sammy Furo, and I'm from Smackover, Arkansas. And up to about 3 weeks or 2 weeks, I was going to Arkansas Tech on John Tucker. And he was a pretty good coach. And Coach Elmer come down one day, and he looked down, and actually I looked up. Had that cigar in his mouth, and he said, Sammy, we're going to have us a good football team over at Magnolia A&M. He said, I want you over there. And I had said about a year before that I'd never go to Magnolia A&M. Now why I said that, I don't know. But I ended up with Magnolia A&M, and it was 2 of the best years, 47 and 48, that I ever spent in college. But Coach Elmer Smith, I remember we were playing, and of the teams we had, we'd lost 2 games in 2 years. We had a good ball club, and we had good players. And we were playing state teachers at the time. And the very first, the kickoff, somehow or another, I got an elbow in the nose and took 6 stitches after the game. Because I went over to the sideline, I couldn't see the manager come out, and he had cotton. And you remember his name? Anyway, he's a good boy. And Coach Elmer asked me, he said, Sammy, is there anything wrong with your legs? I said, no, sir. He said, get with it. So I played that whole ball game with a nose. It felt like it's all over my face. And Delvin, he still calls me Nose because of that. But anyway, Coach Elmer, a lot of people don't know this. I used to cover this campus pretty good, talking to Lake Green, the engineer, Orville Childs. He was over agriculture. And I found out that Coach Elmer Smith at one time played in the minor league baseball. And he come up and he got hurt. He was playing first string for this team. He was a starter. as a catcher. But he got hurt. And you know who he was playing first team in front of? Bill Dickey. And I didn't know that. So he had to be some great baseball player also. Coach Elmer, I have always had the greatest respect for him. He's the kind of man, if he told you it was going to rain, you went and got you an umbrella. And I believed him, and I always admired him. And to this day, I still think of it. And by the way, I did get to see Coach Elmer 2 days before he died over at Little Rock in the hospital. But he was a great man, he was a great coach, and he was either a greater man.
My name is Warren Kaler. I came to Magnolia A&M in 1946. I was in the bank in Haynesville, Louisiana. Coach Elmer Smith come in. I didn't know who he was. He told the president of the bank that he was down there looking for football players. Mr. Rankins told Coach Smith, well, there are 2 here in the bank with us now. There's one standing over there. His name is Warren Kaler. He played here in Haynesville and did real good. Now the other one over there, the red-headed gentleman, his name is Weldon Raspberry. Coach Smith walked up, got each one of us, and said, you boys just out of service? We told him, yes, we've been out about a month. He said, how about let me give you some exercise? Exercise? Weldon looked at me. Weldon had a few beers at this time, and he said, I don't know what he wants. I said, Weldon, he's a football coach. He wants us to go up to A&M and play football for him. I told Coach Elmer that I had no direction in life at this time, that I needed a lot of discipline, but I definitely would like to come and try out for his football team. He said, what position do you play? I said, well, I played offensive tackle and defensive end. He said, that's exactly the positions I need. He looked at Weldon and said, what do you do, son? You had to know Weldon Raspberry to get his answer. What do I do? I play guard, and I love to play. Coach Elmer said, I need a guard. We get in his car and we come to Texas A&M, up here to the school. He puts us out at Cross Hall. He said, go in there and tell the lady that you're here for the dormitory assignments. We went in, and boy, was it a nice, quiet dormitory. It was not like that after Charlie McClendon and Weldon Raspberry and a few more of those boys visited the room to see if we were out of trouble. But oh man, was it good. And if I could have 1 minute more. When I wrote my dissertation at Northwestern University, they asked me to do one thing for the university, to share with them the greatest inspiration of my life. I could not believe what Dr. Fuller asked of me. The greatest inspiration, my father and Coach Elmer Smith. My thesis was on the inspiration of a great man and coach, Coach Elmer Smith. My friends, this tape today is in the Louisiana Library of Research. If you'd like a copy of it, I happen to bring one. I will share it with you. I know Coach McClendon has probably heard it, and several of the other gentlemen who have asked me for it.
If you ever go to Northwestern University, go to the research library. They will make you one. If you ever come to Bossier City, I will make you one.
And my first meeting with Coach Elmer Smith was in 1948 when my brother, who was a highly recruited basketball player, was being recruited by Coach Elmer and many other coaches in the area. And I happened to meet these people as they came through our home. 3 years later, I was graduating from high school in 1951, and I knew that for my parents to send me to college was going to be a tremendous, if not impossible, financial hardship. And being such a sophisticated 16-year-old graduate, I thought, well, I'll just take care of this myself. So I went through my catalog of people I had met who could give me some guidance. The first person that came to mind, and don't ask me why, was Coach Elmer Smith. So without my parents' knowledge, I wrote him a letter explaining my situation and simply asking if he could give me any advice as to how I might get some help to get an education. Well, as I hear it at least, when Coach Elmer got the letter, he took it to then Dean Milton Talley, who was in charge of financial aid, said, okay, buddy, what are we going to do about this? After a closed-door meeting, as the story goes, when Coach Elmer left, he had committed one of his football scholarships to me, and Dean Talley had committed to have a job waiting for me when I got to Magnolia. So a few days later in the mail, I received a piece of paper that changed my whole life. Take it from me, these guys were heroes. I'm just a country girl who wanted some help, and voila, guess what? Like magic. Instantly, I knew that somebody believed in me enough to commit a football scholarship. You wouldn't hear of that today, I'm afraid. Anyway, the letter told me how to proceed when I got to Magnolia, that there would be a job waiting for me. I did that. Coach Elmer and I never spoke of the letter. We never spoke of the scholarship until many years later. While I was here in Magnolia, I met the love of my life right here and made many friendships that have lasted forever. I will never, ever would never be the same, certainly never now. But because somebody I felt was making a sacrifice for me, a girl that he didn't even know, it made a tremendous change in my whole future. Bob and I have been married for 46 years. We raised 3 children. We had satisfying careers, and all the while we kept in touch with Coach Elmer, who was always interested in all his boys here and their families. But that's not the end of the story. In August 1987, Bob and I had moved into a new home, and we were just sitting down for dinner, and the phone rang, and a voice on the phone identified himself as the executor of Coach Elmer's estate, telling me that Coach Elmer had passed away, and we'd been looking for you for days and couldn't find you, but I need to talk to you. The service is going to be tomorrow, and he's requested that you participate. And I said, oh, no, not me. You mean my husband, because he played for Coach Elmer. He said, oh, no, 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 I mean you. And he told me that the service would be at 10 o'clock the following day in Marlton, Arkansas. Could I come on such short notice? Well, did the sun rise in the morning? I'd be there. I didn't know how, but we were able to get me there by someone met me in Little Rock early in the morning. And that day, along with some very outstanding athletes, I'm not sure any of them are here today, people who had played for Coach Elmer, had served with him in coaching capacities, were well known across this nation, were there to pay tribute. And guess what? Here was this country girl up there with people like John David Crow. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? But thank you, Lord, this angel who made such a difference in my life, to the very end requested that I continue to be a part of his life. Can you beat that? All you guys are heroes. I'm a country girl. But I'll never, ever forget the difference that he made in my life, along with all these gentlemen who have had such illustrious careers. So to Coach Elmer, I mean, if you call me from the grave, here I am.
My name is Grady Cathy. I'm from Smackover, Arkansas. I came to Southern State or Southern Arkansas in 1949 and played for Coach Elmer for 4 years. And without a doubt, he had more influence on my life than any other man other than my dad. He was tough and he was fair. Just a couple of things from a personal standpoint, that just how tough and fair he was. My freshman year, we were at Ozarks and we got beat, I think 19-0 or something like that. And we were staying in a hotel downtown, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, Ralph Ross started knocking on the doors and said the bus is leaving for Magnolia in 30 minutes. Well, we all loaded on the bus. We got out to the stadium. Best I remember, along about 8:30 or 9, and we was fixing to all go to the dormitory and go to bed. He said, "Y'all be out on the field in 15 minutes." We went out there, and I don't know, we probably ran for at least an hour. And another incident, I was called back in the Army in 1951. And it seemed that everyone during November and December was joining the service. The university was giving them the grades that they had at that time, and just like they had finished the semester. Well, I had a deferment to a semester, and it was 3 weeks after Christmas. So when I come back from Christmas, I just quit going to class, and I also quit going to the field house and for that blocking and tackling that we did in the off season down there. And about the 3rd or 4th day, I went to the cafeteria, and they said, your lunchroom card is no good down here anymore. I said, "What do you mean?" Said, "Coach Elmer called and said to cancel your card." And so anyway, I went over to see I said, "Coach, what are you talking about?" And I said, "Heck, I've only got a couple of weeks." He said, "Yeah, you got 2 more weeks. If you come to the field house down there and work out these other 2 weeks, you can eat till you leave." So anyway, I went back to the field house and started eating again. And along that same line, right after I got in the Army, after they called me in the Army, I found out when I was going to get out. It was in October, and he told me he had 5 ball games left when I got out. And he said, "Kathy, if you come on and play these 5 ball games, I'll see you through school if it takes 10 years. Well, it didn't take 10 years, but because of him, that I did finish school.
I'm Don Cruz, and my hometown is DeQueen, Arkansas, and I probably played longer for Coach Elmer than most of the folks that ever played for him. I was here when it was a junior college, and then when it became a 4-year school, well, you could finish your junior college 2 years and then have 3 more years if you wanted to. And a lot of them on our teams during the junior college transferred to other AIC schools, and a few of them went on to major universities. But I decided if I was going to play in the AIC, I'd rather play for Elmer Smith than I had anybody else in the AIC. And I never have regretted playing 5 years for him. And Delvin Ross has asked me 2 or 3 times how I made it 5 years under Coach Elmer Smith. And I told him, well, it wasn't all that bad if you did what he told you to do. But anyway, we had in the last group, they mentioned this Old Nick that Coach Elmer used to mix up. And we used to meet up in the upstairs in the front of the old armory. And we went in there one afternoon, and it was a night meeting, really, this time. And on the desk there was a glass of Old Nick there. And I knew, and everybody else knew, that somebody was going to have to drink that Old Nick. I didn't know what was in it, but it looked like tobacco juice to me, that somebody had chewed up and that chewed tobacco and just filled the glass up when they needed to spit. But anyway, Coach Elmer and Coach Auburn walked in there, and they looked at each other, and Coach Elmer said, "Well, I heard of a boy smoking on the team this week," and said two or three more things. And Bill Cook, he's already been mentioned by that other group, didn't say a word. He just got up out of his seat and ran up there and drank it down. And come to find out, he wasn't even the boy that Coach Elmer was talking about. And I guess the highlight of my career over here was in 1951 when we won the AIC championship. And I think it was the first one that we'd ever won down here, and that was probably the biggest thrill of my football career at that time, Southern State College.
I'm Lamar Reese from the thriving metropolis of Aubrey, Arkansas. I came down here in '49 to play basketball for Coach Elmer, and Coach Elmer invited the basketball players out for football. And some of us basketball players had never even seen a football game, let alone played in a game. Now, if you've ever seen a three-ring circus, that was a three-ring circus. But one of the things that I remember about our trips we'd have to take, back in those days, the highways were terrible. There was holes in the highways you could throw 9 grown elephants in. And one time we went to Batesville and to play a basketball game. We lost the game, and we always ate after the games. And we were in this cafe getting ready to eat, and Coach Elmer had walked out of the room for a minute, and one of our teammates, Al Sanders, he was a big prankster and jokester back in those days, and he gathered everybody's bread up, and he dealt this bread out to everybody, a little card game with the bread. Well, Coach Elmer came in and caught him dealing the bread, and he said, "Boys, follow me." So we went to the bus, and back in those days, a trip to Batesville was, I'm talking about a week's work. And we bounced down that highway and got here about, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And Coach Elmer said, get your practice gear on, boys. We're fixing to practice. And we did. Coach Elmer probably influenced my life as much or more than any other person, with the exception of my parents.
I'm W.T. Watson, came here from Hampton, Arkansas, and left for a while after that, but back here for a number of years. Coach Elmer, my first contact with him, I was an 11th grader, playing in the tournament in Magnolia, Arkansas. He came by, wanted to visit with me. We went into a dressing room and talked for no more than 10 or 15 minutes, but anyway, he said, "I want you at Southern Arkansas University." Didn't offer me a scholarship, didn't tell you I'd help you anything. I said, "Yes, sir, Coach, I'll be there." And of course, later on, I turned down a scholarship or two, but that's one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, is to come to Magnolia to have an opportunity to play for a person as Coach Elmer. He was a great disciplinarian. But he had great feel for people. He liked people. He had a great feel for them. He was tough, and there was no such thing as not knowing how to work if you stayed around him for a while. I'd like to relate my first night at a basketball practice. He had called a meeting earlier in the year, and he was working with football. He was also the basketball coach, and told us we need to get in shape. Well, I did. I got in shape. I'd jog around the baseball field 2 or 3 times, and I thought I was doing well. We came out for basketball that first night. There's probably 70, 75 people out. I think everybody that owned a pair of tennis shoes showed up that night. And we started about 7 o'clock, and a little after 11, he released us. And when we got through, we spent the last hour shooting on one end of the goal on one end and rebounding on the other, just running that circle. After a little bit, you'd see a guy drop out, see another guy drop out. Coach Elmer would send one out occasionally, but we got down to 15 people. He blew the whistle, called us all over the side and says, this is our basketball team. Said, we've got it down where we can work now, where we can get something done, and he made the squad cut that first night. I played here, played baseball and basketball it's my 3rd year, and we had not beaten Arkansas Tech. We had a ball game with them here. And 2 or 3 of us talked about we may just drop out of school and join the Air Force. That sounded like a good deal. And after we was going to stay and play the Arkansas Tech ball game, we got beat 2 points at Magnolia. A guy hit a long shot late in the ball game to beat us. So the next day, I get up and go to El Dorado, Arkansas, pick up the papers, fill out all the paperwork. I'm joining the Air Force. I go home, I get my mother to sign those papers. Now keep in mind, I'm hitchhiking, didn't have any transportation. I'm back on highway from Hampton going to El Dorado to turn those papers in. Who drives up and picks me up? Coach Elmer Smith did. He drove up in that white station wagon, pushed the door open, said, boy, get in. We went to Warren and stopped. We went to Monticello and stopped. He told me to get out Monticello. We went in the gym. He watched Monticello play basketball. We came back through Crossett. There was not one word said on that trip. Coach Elmer drove, and I sat there and I rode. We got to the dormitory out here. He let me out, and he said, boy, you better be in class Monday morning. This was on Saturday. I said, yes, sir, I'll be there. And I kept those papers for a while, but that was great for me that Coach Elmer found out about it. And that's really how much he cared about people, whatever extent it took for him to keep his people straight, give them direction, leadership. And I've been in coaching or been in athletics all these years, and there's no telling how many times I have thought about how would Coach Elmer have done this? How would he have handled this situation? It was just a pleasure, a blessing, and I'm just thankful for having had the privilege to play for it.
I'm David Woolley from Stamps, Arkansas. I was born and raised in North Little Rock. Coach Elmer found me at the YMCA in Little Rock. I was boxing one night, and he stayed there. You could stay on a cot in the gym for $1 a night. After the boxing match, he came by and he told me he wanted to see me down at Magnolia. So I came down and got a scholarship. This was in 1951. And I graduated in business, and when I graduated, I went in the business world. I worked for Halliburton Company 11 years, and I decided I wanted to be a coach, so I came back. I was in the field house in badminton class or something, and he was taking exercise, and he walked in, and he bent down over me, and he said, "You're not still here, are you?" So after the class, I got to talk with Coach Elmer, a long personal talk, and told him that I wanted to become a coach, and he told me things that I never forgot. And a lot of the men that are up here that have been coaches, I have seen them, how they patterned their coaching life after Coach Elmer, as I did. And he told me, he said, when you're hard on your boys and you're strict and you're disciplined, never let practice end on a sour note. And I got to thinking about that, and I'm sure they can too, and I remember 2 or 3 things. It was close to the end of practice, or it was the end of practice, and several of us were married, and we lived down there in some Army barracks. Louis and Babe and Sam Pricks and his wife, and me and my wife, and Harvey Cook and his wife, and I can't remember who all. But we was practicing 3 times a day, and we'd go to practice and come back. We'd all just put on a pair of shorts and walk up there and lay down and rest, because it wouldn't be long till you'd go back. Except Harvey. Harvey Cook, he just wore a bathrobe. Somebody had called Coach Elmer, and at the end of practice, he said, from now on, Harvey, you got to put on some shorts. You can't be wearing just that bathrobe. And then another story that he wrote in Coach Elmer's book, and I'm sure many of you have read it, and he referred to me in there, and it was the end of practice, and we'd been scrimmaging hard, and he told me to turn around. I didn't know what he meant, and he showed me. All the team was going one direction, and I was going the other way. And he put some toughies up there, and they'd snap the ball, and they would maul me good. They did that 4 or 5 times, and I looked at him, and he said, if you're going to play like your eyes are in your line up that way. And I never forgot that. And when I coached, I patterned after him, and I won just like he did. He was an inspiration to my life, and he turned my life around.
I'm Jimmy Cup, and I came from the name of Redfield, or a little town by the name of Redfield. I did go to high school there a couple of years, 1.5 years to England, Arkansas, and finished up at Whitehall when Whitehall and Redfield consolidated. And my first contact with Coach Elmer was at Whitehall when he came down to see me play basketball one night. We had a long meeting. He took me out to eat after the game and convinced me that the program at Southern State would not continue unless I came down there to play for him. And both football and basketball, I played for him 2 years, 52 and 53, 53 and 54. Well, I first got down to school, and then we had they made a new rule where you couldn't start practicing until school started, and we already had a game scheduled that first week. So we had 1 week, and these guys, most of them here, I guess all of them here, remember we only had 1 week to get ready for that first game, and so we were practicing 3 times a day instead of 2 a day in order to get ready. But I understood, being from a small town and not knowing the plays, why I wasn't getting to play a lot except on defense. And that was on the C team, which we were the dummies. But I still remember how great he thought I was when he was down there talking to him about coming up there. So we went to Livingston, Alabama, and I knew I wasn't going to get to play because he told us that we didn't know the plays. So I fumbled around there, and they brought us some programs out there. So I kind of looked at the program, kind of held it away from me. I knew my picture was going to be on. I didn't know which page it's going to be on, but I went through the whole book. My picture wasn't in there, so I got to looking at the roster, and I wasn't even on the roster. So one more thing Coach Elmer is besides being all the things that they've said he was, and he was that and more too, was he was a salesman. So he sold me on coming down there, and like they've said again over and over, I'm not going to repeat over and over, but he changed my life. When he told you to do something, me coming from an undisciplined school to one like this would mean something. When he told me to do something, I did it. I'll never forget, of course, I played football that first year, and then we were practicing basketball before our last game in football, both of them. And being from Whitehall, a small school, we weren't real regimented in the art of basketball. We just got out there, and whoever got it, probably like Reese, dribble down there and shoot it. Well, I'll never forget, he had made a believer out of me by this time, and we was running a single post, Calvin Thomas, and I told WT about this earlier. I don't know if he believed me or not, but he told one of our plays where you throw the ball over here and you go over and screen. Well, I thought he said scream, and I never heard of a screen really, but lucky me, WT didn't do it when he got the ball, and he got it first, or I'd have gone over and screamed like a wild Indian, I guarantee you, because he told me to. But anyway, as most have always said, if any one person besides probably my dad, man, had an effect on my life, and all through my coaching career, insurance career, and then now fitness, on a fitness center now, and personal training. All these years that I've gone through, and there's been a lot of them, there never has been a tough situation that's come up that I hadn't thought about. As I think W.T. Moore said, that what would Coach Elmer do? And his decision probably wasn't always the right one, but nearly all of them were. So if you stuck with the ones he made, I always felt like that most of the time you'd win. So as I said earlier, most effect anyone's had besides my dad on my life over the years has been Coach Elmer Smith. It's a privilege for me to have played for him.
I can't see. My name's Louis Sanford. I'm from the town they named after me, Ball Knob, Arkansas. Coach Elmer sent Sam Bailey over I was working in a department store at El Dorado, a clothing store, and he walked in, and back then I smoked a little, and I didn't know what to do with that cigarette when he said he was a coach. So I just threw it on the floor and stomped it out. But anyway, I came over here in the summer, played 51, 52, and 53. And I think what I remember about Coach Elmer more than anything is that one time I went to see him just to talk with him. I said, Coach, I want you to know that I appreciate all you've done for me. Helped me through school, helped my wife get through school, helped me have 2 kids. Now, he didn't help me do it that way. I had 2 kids while I was in school, and there was a doctor here that kind of took care of you, your wife. And anyway, I said, I really help you for giving me all those things. He said, now, Louis, remember this. I have never given one athlete anything. They all earned it. And I remember that well. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Hoyt Watson. I was one of Elmer's boys that he didn't recruit. I'm sure he didn't even want me down here. But I had a sister who'd gone to school here and was down here after the war and was working in the business office. And she talked to Coach Elmer and told him, and he didn't even invite me down for the first 2 weeks of practice, said, there's going to be 200 boys out there, and I wouldn't know him from anybody else. Tell him to just wait, and when school starts, then come out, and I'll take a look at him. Well, I did. I was very disappointed. You know, I missed 2. How could you catch up after 2 weeks of practice? Well, first thing, I played end in high school in Nashville, Arkansas, and Elmer, first thing, he took a look at me and decided I was a good guard. Well, I hadn't played but 2 years in high school to start with, and he gonna make a guard out of me. Well, 2 weeks of that, and I quit. Well, you don't ever quit on Elmer Smith, let me tell you, folks. Well, I went the rest of that fall and started back out in the spring. Well, every dirty detail there was in that spring, I got to catch the balls that the extra point kickers tried while they was practicing and everything. Everybody else is doing this. Well, towards the end of spring practice, Elmer decided I wasn't going to quit, that I really wasn't a quitter. And so then he started working with me. And he made a football player out of me. Let me tell you, I wasn't a football player when I came here. I thought I was. But when Elmer got through with me, I was. I'll tell you a couple of 3 funny incidents. 1948, I was on the starting lineup for the first time. And we played somebody and didn't do real well. We know how we wound up getting beaten. I don't know if Elmer Smith ever lost 2 games in his life straight in a row in his life. We play in Washita the next week. Well, I already got demoted to the second team. Practiced all week with the second team. And we went up to Washita. And they won the toss and elected to receive. And about the time we're getting ready to kick off, the team started hollering, Coach, we only got 10 boys out here. He looked over at me and said, Watson, what are you doing over here? Get out there. I'm on the B team all week, you know. Now I played the best football game I've ever played in my life. Now, you talking about motivation. He could motivate you people. All right, we won that ball game pretty handily. Donald was down here by that time. That's right. And so we went up to Arkansas Tech, and we got beat either 7-6 or 6-0 or something. And he was, boy, he didn't let us stay up there that night. He got you boys up at 3 to come home. We came on home that night. We never had planned to stay up there, let me tell you. We stopped in North Little Rock for everybody to go to the restroom at a service station. I'll never forget it. I went in there and put a nickel or a penny or something and got some peanuts. Those of you that played for Elmer know about that upstairs in the armory down here. Every Monday, the first thing he did was we all met up there and he told us everything we'd done wrong. Whether we'd won or lost, that was the first session. We finally got through telling us everything and taking us one at a time that he felt had done lots of wrong there. And he started on that ball club. Somebody had fumbled that night, and he spent about 15 minutes on him. He got around to me, and he said, "Watson, what in the world are you doing buying peanuts and eating peanuts?" Now, this is after the ball game, about 6 hours or 8 hours later. And one of the reasons we lost that ball game, I was buying peanuts. He just felt like playing football or anything with him was a 24-hour-a-day thing. You're supposed to think it every minute, live it every minute, and mostly we did, folks. Mostly we did. He got you boys up to College of the Ozarks because 2 years earlier we went up to the College of the Ozarks with a 7-1 record, I believe it was. He'd already got a letter from the Little Rose Bowl that if we won out, we only had 2 to go, Ozarks and Monticello, that we would be the visiting team in the Little Rose Bowl. We got up there in the rain and let them beat us 6-0 or something, but let them beat us. And then he tells us about it. He didn't tell us for the game. I don't know if it made any difference, but we lose that ball game, and we get in, and Monday up in the armory, he informs us about the letter he'd gotten from the Little Rose Bowl. Well, you can figure what we did to Monticello the next Saturday, don't you? We mopped up the floor. That's 2 or 3 little stories, but I tell you, Elmer Smith taught me more about motivation than anybody in my life. I finally wound up, I'm going to say this, not meaning anything about it, I finally wound up going to Florida State and getting my doctorate. I've been spent 28 years University of North Texas as a professor, and I'll give all the credit to Elmer Smith for teaching you motivation. You can do whatever you set out to do. I think the world of Elmer Smith. He became a real good friend of mine after I got through playing ball. He wasn't a friend of mine when I was down here, I'll tell you that.
I'm real proud. I'm from Bauxite, Arkansas, and my first encounter with Coach Elmer Smith was in the school year of 1948. They called me out of class, and I walked out in the hall, and Coach Elmer was standing there. And I had been offered a scholarship at 2 other schools close by home, but he talked with me, and kind of like Jimmy was talking about, he had just his eyes. He was very convincing, and I knew right then that this was the man that I wanted to play football for. And in fact, after he left, I had to go get me a map to find out where Magnolia, Arkansas was located. But he was a man that was way ahead of his time. And I don't believe there's a person in this panel today that wouldn't say that there was something about him that after being in contact with him, he'd make you want to get up and go to work on Monday morning when you didn't really want to go to work. It was just something motivative that would just instill in you. And I know most of us here have stories, and I could talk from now until this time tomorrow of stories on the man, of his toughness and his hardness. But he had a heart as big as Dallas, and he was genuine through and through. The story I'd like to tell, I'm going to go back, it tells a little bit of his hardness, but it's one of my favorite stories. I had been instrumental in recruiting a good running back from Benton, Arkansas, named Frank Crabb. And when Frank reported as a freshman, he was ready to play. I mean, he had some natural ability. It's Dr. Frank Crabb today. But anyway, Frank had one problem. He picked up the smoking habit in high school. And Coach Elmer had an uncanny way of getting points across. Sometimes it was with Old Nick, sometimes it was running, sometimes it was just with words. But anyway, Crabb as a freshman started and he was a threat anytime he touched the football. But we'd gone down through the season, and it was getting, I think it was in October, and to save my life, I can't remember who it was against, but I believe it was against Washita. But it was a cold, brisk October night, and they kicked off to us, and Crabb took the kickoff, and he went, I believe it was 97, 98 yards for a touchdown. When he crossed the goal line, cramps hit his legs, and he just doubled up in the end zone. Well, Coach Ross and his Swampers run out there, and they got him off the field, got him over on the sideline. Everybody was elated. Players on the sideline, we're hollering and jumping. Here we are, 6-0 lead with 10 seconds gone in the ball game. Coach Elmer walked over to him when he was laying there on the ground. He didn't kick him, but he took his foot and he nudged him on the thigh. He said, "Crabb, you got so much nicotine in your body you can't even get any oxygen down in your legs." And like I said, he had his way of getting his point across. But I think that history ought to show and realize the job the man did, because he was recruiting against four-year schools, he was playing against four-year schools, and there'll never be another one like him, I can assure you. And there's, in all of my years, I don't believe a day goes by that I don't think of something that he left with me. Thank you.